So guys, welcome back, and now we will continue the remaining lecture, and the next topic which we are going to pick up for news is the Parshuram Kund festival. It can be an important topic for the art and culture segment of prelims as well as main. Okay. Now recently Arunachal Pradesh government informed that the Parshuram Kund festival is to be celebrated from 12th to 16th January 2023. Now you see this Bhagwan Parshuram Kund Mandir, it is located here, and this is actually the Lohit river. Okay. So on the banks of Lohit river, Lohit is a tributary of Brahmaputra. Lohit is a tributary of Brahmaputra, actually a left bank tributary of Brahmaputra. Okay. So this is celebrated over there, but let's see what is it about the festival. It is a Hindu pilgrimage site situated on the Brahmaputra plateau in the lower reaches of Lohit river and 21 kilometers north of Tezu in the Lohit district of Arunachal Pradesh. Now Lohit is name of a river also, Lohit is name of a district also, and Lohit is a tributary of Brahmaputra. Devotees and sadhus take a holy dip in its water each year on the occasion of Makar Sankranti in January. Makar Sankranti is celebrated on January of 14th. Okay. It is also known as the Kumbh of Northeast. Now we know that Kumbh Mela happens once in 12 years in 4 I would say places in India. Okay. Haridwar, Ujjain, Nasik and Allahabad. This happens once in 12 years. This Parshuram Kund festival does not happen once in 12 years. On this aspect, we are not comparing it with the Kumbh. Actually, we are comparing it with the Kumbh on the aspect that a lot of, I would say, holy figures like sadhus and all, they take a dip in the holy water. And similarly, this kind of activity happens during the Kumbh in those 4 cities. They take a dip in the holy water. Religious significance of this festival, it is dedicated to mythological figure sage Parshuram. This popular festival attracts pilgrims from Nepal, from across India and from nearby states of Manipur and Assam also. The project development of Parshuram Kund is sanctioned under the Prasad scheme. Prasad stands for Pilgrimage Rejuvenation and Spiritual Heritage Augmentation Drive of the Ministry of Tourism. Okay. So this is about the festival. Next and very important piece of news, that is delay in census. It can be important from prelims point of view because from this particular topic we can take out certain I would say facts and figures about the census. It can also be important from mains point of view. So that is why I am terming it as very important. Okay. Now census, basically how we define census? Census is the activity of counting the population. It is a document in which we count the population, various aspects of population like how many males are there, how many females are there, how many Hindus are there, how many Muslims are there, how many scheduled castes, how many scheduled tribes, how many above the poverty line, how many lower the poverty line, who will be the beneficiaries of various government schemes. That all we identify on the basis of this census. And there are various reports according to the United Nations, according to which those reports we are going to be the world's most populous country by 2023, that is this year. And obviously when we are going to be the world's most populous country, we need a census. We need to know the information, the data about our population, and that the census will give. The census was identified as a very important data set by the Britishers at that time, and 1872 was the year when the first census was rolled out in the country. It was 1872, but 1881 was the year when first full scale census was rolled out. And since then, every 10 years, a census is rolled out. 1891, 1901, likewise. 1911, 1921, 1931, 41, 51, 61. And the last census which we have was the census of 2011. After 2011, the next census had to come in 2021. But COVID was going on, so the census could not be released. The census counting did not happen because people going from one household to the other household, they may be the carriers of the virus. This was the basic logic given by the government, and that was right. But now the government has said that it will be delayed in the second half of this year, that is 2023. The census counting will start. We will start all the procedures for census counting, and by 2024-25 we will be able to release the data. We will be able to release the census. So that is a cause of concern for many, I would say, people across the country. Especially it is a cause of concern for the government also, because the government does not have this data about their population. The government does not have this data about how many people are scheduled caste, how many people are scheduled tribe, how many people are below the poverty line or above the poverty line. And these are marginalized sections of the society, and the government has to give some welfare schemes to these people. They have to give some welfare to these people. So the welfare to these people will only be given on the basis of the previous census, that is 2011. That is why many people are worried. So another key fact I would like you to know is, like in every census, we have a rise in population. We have a rise in population. Right from 1881 till 2011, we saw census after census there was an increase in population, except for one census. And that census was the census of 1921, in which we saw the population decreasing from the previous census of 1911. The reason was Spanish flu, a pandemic of that era, of that period, in which around 5% of India's population was wiped off. Around 1.2 crore to 1.5 crore people died. And this is the, I would say, fact which is mentioned in the NCRT, which I am giving you, which I am stating you. Okay. So that was the only census in the history of India which witnessed a negative growth in the population. Okay. So this is there, and apart from it, all other census saw it. Acha, we are also wanting to evaluate through the census that how many people died during the COVID pandemic which struck us now. We are also wanting to take this out, and the official figure, the exact figure will come out when the census is released. Okay. So this is there about the census, basics about the census. Now population census basically provides basic statistics on state of human resources, demography, culture and economic structure at local, regional and national level. It began in the year 1872 when the first census was conducted non-synchronously. The census enumeration exercise in India was carried out in every 10 years. The first synchronous census, or the first full-scale census, was taken under the British rule in 1881, which we have already seen, by W.C. Plowden, Census Commissioner of India. The responsibility of conducting a decadal census rests with the Office of the Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India, which is under Ministry of Home Affairs. So which ministry deals with it? It is Ministry of Home Affairs which deals with it. Now, mention of census in the constitution or any legislation, is it mentioned in the constitution or is there any law for it? Yes, population census is listed in the Union list, entry number 69 of 7th schedule in the Indian constitution, means it is the responsibility of the central government to carry out the census activity. Census is conducted under the provisions of the Census Act 1948. There is this law, and in the constitution also it is mentioned in the Union list. Process of census enumeration. What is the process? The census operation in India have been carried out in two phases. It is carried out in two phases. Okay. The first phase is house listing and housing census. Now, when the counting starts, so what these people will do? These people will go and identify how many households are there, how many houses are there. But that will be done in the first phase. Then in the second phase, population enumeration will be done. Means in those households or in those houses, how many people are living, that will be counted in the second phase. The population enumeration follows the housing census with a gap of 6 to 8 months. Means 6 to 8 months, there is this gap between these two, I would say, steps or these two phases. The population enumeration phase, each person is enumerated and his individual particulars like age, marital status, religion, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, mother tongue, education level, disability, economic activity, migration, fertility are also counted. They are also counted. Means if the census people will come, जनगणना वाले लोग अगर आएंगे तो they will ask me my name, my actual place of residence or my hometown, and they'll come to know that I am migrated to Delhi NCR region. So since when I am staying here, they will ask if any offsprings are there, means any children born to me are there, and how many people are staying, what is my religion, which caste do I belong to, all the things they will ask, and they will have that data about me in a proper format. Okay, so this will be there. Now, significance of the census. When I talk about the significance of the census provides population data and characteristics, housing and amenities for every village and town. It helps in framing government programs to uplift vulnerable sections, and it is used to validate or reject estimates of various sample surveys. The census data are used to determine the number of seats to be reserved for SCs and STs in parliament and state legislatures, because in parliament and state legislatures there is reservation for SCs and STs on the basis of their population. On the basis of their population, and if their population has increased and is more in proportion, so number of seats allocated to SC ST will be more. The total number of seats are freezed, it is 543, but out of 543, let us suppose 43 seats are for SC ST, and if the SC ST population has increased in proportion to the general category population, then the number of seats will be increased from 43 to let us suppose 50 in the Lok Sabha. So this will happen. In case of panchayats and municipal bodies, reservation of seats for SCs and STs is based on the proportion in their population. Other than the census, there is no other source that can provide this information of SCs and STs. It is also the basis for reviewing the country's progress in the past decade. How the country has progressed in the past decade, monitoring the ongoing schemes of government and planning for the future is done. Next, why administrative boundaries are frozen? Actually, when this happens, when the census has to be taken, administrative boundaries gets freezed. And last lecture, means last to last week, we saw that when this was happening, delimitation was happening, then also the administrative boundaries were frozen of that particular state, that is Assam. Now in census also administrative boundaries are frozen. Now we come to this point that why administrative boundaries are frozen when census is taken. Now before every census, states are required to provide information on changes in the number of notified districts, villages, towns and other administrative units such as tehsils, talukas, police stations, registered to the Registrar General of India. The states will give this information to the center. When the center declares that okay, we are going to do this census, now it becomes the responsibility of every state to give this information to the center, that how many districts are there, how many villages are there, how many tehsils are there, how many talukas are there, how many police stations are there. So all these information will be given by the state to the central government. Okay. Now the central government then orders the states that okay, whatever information you have given me about your geographical entities or geographical boundaries in your state, you freeze them. Ab you don't do anything, you don't change anything. Okay. Why you don't change anything? Because we are designing the counting and all according to this input which has been given by you to us. Okay. Freezing boundary limits of administrative units at least 3 months prior thus is a prerequisite for conducting the census to prevent state governments' tendencies to create new district or tehsils or reorganize the existing ones. If changes in the administrative boundaries happen during the census, there would be chaos in the field, because responsibilities are allocated that you go in this region, you go in this block, you go in this village. Now if the administrative boundaries keep on changing, then the census enumeration or the census counting will not be effective. There will be a lot of chaos, because the people who will be going, they will be always in a confused state. Okay, that is why the administrative boundaries are frozen. Now implications of delay. If the census is delayed, what will be the implications? Means what will be the, I would say, outcomes of delay, or what will be the impact of delay? First will be non-availability of reliable data, because we rely on census a lot. You might have heard me also talking a lot about or taking reference of the census of India, and that the latest census is 2011, and now presently in 2022 I am a bit worried, or I am not so much confident by taking that reference of census 2011, because that is an obsolete figure. And government also needs updated figures, because the government needs to implement its various welfare schemes for the poor, and the poor will be identified by the census. The government needs to implement various schemes for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, women. Those will be identified by the census, by the latest census. So this will be there, and if we are taking reference of the 2011 census, there will be many people who will be left out of welfare activities or welfare schemes of the government, because they are not under the counting of the government. Limitation of sample surveys. There are various sample surveys also. Sample surveys are basically you go to a particular pocket and there you do that survey, but of that particular pocket also exact data is not available, the updated data is not available. So the results or the outcomes of those sample surveys also will be compromised. Okay, so this is there. These surveys cannot be useful to find answers related to literacy rates in villages, proportion of people in tehsil getting regular potable water supply. Sample surveys will not be beneficial in such activities, but yes, certain levels or certain aspects like the condition of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the migration and all, sample surveys are useful. But sample surveys also should be on the basis of latest data available. Then ambiguity in granting reservation. As I told you, the proportion of population of SC and ST is actually known to us by the 2011 census only. After that, it is not known to us. So we actually are maybe devoiding them of their reservation benefits, okay, because we are counting their proportion according to the 2011 census only. Dynamic rural urban distribution, like there is a lot of migration which is happening in India. Now according to 2011 census, around 32%, 31.8% of India's population was living in urban areas, and the remaining 68% of the population was living in rural areas. But there has been a rampant rural to urban migration in these 10, 11, 12 years. And we have certain figures like, when I talk about Bengaluru municipality, urban area, Bengaluru is, and this Bengaluru municipality grew by 49.3% during 2001 to 11, while the municipal corporation of Mumbai, it grew by 11.9%, Delhi 11.7% and Chennai 7%, and these all had much lower growth as compared to Bengaluru, and this was 2001 to 11, but after 11 also the growth rate was very high, and in fact in some municipalities the migration rate or the expansion of those cities was very rapid, and expansion of cities happen only due to migration. So we need to enumerate these kind of population dynamics also, which is very important for us, and census will only tell us about these dynamics. enumerating COVID mortality. We will come to know about the people who have died during the COVID pandemic, and that we'll only come to know the exact figure, we'll only come to know from the census. Then discrepancies in PDS entitlement. PDS, Public Distribution System, National Food Security Act is there, in which free food allocation is now done by the government. So we have identified around 67% of India's population, means 2/3 of India's population, that is around 75% of rural population, 50% of urban population, which is entitled for National Food Security Act benefits. Now this can be compromised because this data, 75% of rural population, 50% of urban population, is according to the 2011 census. So this has to be updated, otherwise we will be bypassing a lot of beneficiaries. That is why the census should be rolled out as soon as possible. When we come to the next news, that is Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is basically an event organized by the government of India to commemorate or to I would say honor the contributions of the Indian diaspora in national development. Now when I use this word Indian diaspora, diaspora basically has been derived from a Latin word diasperren, which means dispersions. Those Indians who have dispersed from India and are living in other countries. Now diaspora can be categorized into two types of, I would say, categories. Before 2015 it was three types of categories. So we'll discuss the three and then we'll see how three converted into two. First are NRIs, non-resident Indians, means they have Indian passport but they are not residing in India. They have either gone for studies or they have either gone for economic activities, for doing a job, for doing a business. They are not residing in India but they own or they possess an Indian passport. Those are NRIs. Second is OCI, Overseas Citizens of India. Basically those people who had earlier Indian passport but now in their lifetime they have given up on the Indian passport and have a foreign passport. They do not have an Indian passport and in their lifetime only they have given up the Indian passport and got citizenship of other countries. And the third is PIO, persons of Indian origin. Their forefathers, Dada, Pardada, they were Indians, they were possessing Indian passport. They were taken by the Britishers to other countries because at that time Dada Pardada ka time was Britishers time. They were taken to other countries. Then the Britishers left India, Britishers left those countries, those people stayed there only. And their future generations were born there and they got the citizenship by birth of those countries only. Those people were termed as persons or people of Indian origin. They also do not have Indian passport. Difference between OCI and PIO was OCIs in their lifetime, they earlier possessed Indian passport but now got citizenship of other countries. So now they gave up on their Indian passport and got the passport of other countries. PIOs never had Indian passport. Their forefathers might be having Indian passport but they are born in other countries but by root they are Indians. Okay. So in 2015 these two categories were merged, OCI and PIOs were merged and now presently OCI is there only. So presently there are two categories, NRIs and OCIs. PIOs are also categorized as OCI, OCI are also categorized as OCIs. So Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is basically an event which was earlier an annual event, now largely it is a biannual event which happens once in 2 years. Is for commemorating the contribution of Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora means NRIs as well as OCIs in the national development. And earlier when we started our independent journey, we were not very much, I would say, inclined towards our diaspora. It was in the 1980s when we started considering, or when we started looking towards our diaspora. Before 1980s, we considered the problems of our diaspora as the problems of their, or the internal problems of that country in which that diaspora was living, the host country of that diaspora. So we decided that we will not interfere, and this disgruntled the Indian diaspora as well, that our people are not looking after us. But in the 1980s, when Rajiv Gandhi government was formed, there was a shift in strategy, and we started commemorating, we started honoring the contributions made by the Indian diaspora in national development, because we realized that these are the people who are sending a lot of money back in the form of remittances. And last, I think a few weeks ago, we covered that news in which India is going to receive $100 billion as remittances, and India is the first country which will be doing so, which will be receiving so by the Indian diaspora. Remittances, basically the money which is sent by the people from abroad to India, and that money is in dollars. So we started commemorating, or we started respecting or honoring the Indian diaspora in the mid 1980s, and eventually in 2003 we started this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. We started celebrating this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Atal Bihari Vajpayee government was there. Actually, a committee, LM Singhvi committee, was formed in the year 2002 to find out, or to explore the possibilities of formally honoring or formally commemorating the contributions by the Indian diaspora in national development. And that committee recommended that we should be celebrating this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. This Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is celebrated on 9th January every 2 years now. And this date 9th January has a significance, has a special significance. This date 9th January is the very same date on which Mahatma Gandhi in 1915 returned from South Africa to India to lead India's national freedom movement. And purposely we have kept that date. Okay. So don't confuse yourself that we are celebrating Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Some people or some aspirants say that we are celebrating Pravasi Bharatiya Divas since 1915 when Mahatma Gandhi came back. No, we are celebrating it since 2003. But the date which we have chosen is 9th January, the same date at which Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa in the year 1915. Now, we talk about this. The 17th edition of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas convention has started in Madhya Pradesh's Indore city. The 17th PBD convention holds significance as it is being organized as a physical event after a gap of 4 years, because during COVID it was the 16th edition, that is the last one. PBD convention was held in virtual mode in 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Theme of this year's PBD is Diaspora, Reliable Partners for India's Progress in Amrit Kal. Now what is this Amrit Kal? Amrit Kal is basically this span of 25 years from 2022 to 2047. This is Amrit Kal, in which this term Amrit Kal was coined or was spoken about by the Prime Minister in his Independence Day speech, last year's 2022's Independence Day speech, and he has kept 2014 as the target year for India to be a developed country. And he said that we are entering the Amrit Kal. This 25 years is very much crucial for India's future, and this was termed as the Amrit Kal. Now about Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is observed on January 9 to strengthen the engagement of Indian community overseas with India. January 9 was chosen as the day to celebrate PBD as it was in 1915, the same day on which Mahatma Gandhi returned to India. It also marks the contributions of Indians living abroad in the development of the land of their ancestors. The conventions are very useful in networking. Basically, a lot of networking happens here during these events. Indians do network with the diaspora, and diaspora in themselves also establish networking. So that is very crucial part of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. PBD conventions were being held every year since 2003, but since 2015 we are celebrating it in 2 years, or once in 2 years. But after 2015 also I have seen that every year, in some of the years it was celebrated consecutively, but now largely it has been stabilized once in 2 years. Next, history of PBD. A high level committee on Indian diaspora under LM Singhvi had recommended in January 2002 that the government must renew and strengthen linkages of overseas Indians to their place of origin and with each other. The decisions to celebrate Pravasi Bharatiya Divas was taken by the former Indian Prime Minister late Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 2003. The first PBD was celebrated on 9th January 2003 in New Delhi. It is organized by Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, in partnership with CII, that is Confederation of Indian Industry, and other stakeholders. Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award. We also started giving the award to Indian diaspora who have significantly contributed in India's national development. During the convention, Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award is conferred on the selected overseas Indians. This award is given for significant contributions by overseas Indians to various fields both in India and abroad. It is the highest honor conferred on a non-resident Indian, person of Indian origin, or an organization or institution established and run by non-resident Indians or persons of Indian origin. Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award is conferred by the President of India. Various MPs in UK who are of Indian origin, or there was an MP of European Parliament also, she belonged to UK but she was of Indian origin, they have also been conferred at times Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award. So this is there. Now the Prime Minister delivered a speech. Obviously the Prime Minister will be doing so, and in his speech he basically, what were the highlights of his speech? He termed Pravasi Bharatiya as the country's brand ambassadors, because they are the people who represent India, because these people will be known as Indians abroad because they are of Indian origin. Okay. And their activities, their contributions to the development of that country will have a direct or an indirect impact on India's image. And basically what the Prime Minister is seeing them, as ambassadors of India who will take the name or who will glorify India in foreign countries. And this is a fact actually. Okay. India will chair the G20 summit in 2023 because India has assumed presidency of G20, group of 20, and this also was highlighted by the Prime Minister. He reminded the gathering that India will host the G20 summit in 2023 as the chair of this multilateral forum. He underlined that it was a big opportunity to make the world aware of the country's past experience to attain a sustainable future. Okay. And India is actively pursuing with many countries all over the world for this G20 in this tenure of G20 presidency. Okay. So, and India has assumed this presidency for the very first time. We covered this topic when India assumed G20 presidency. Next is, he also highlighted the responsibilities of the Indians living overseas. He said that you are our ambassadors, but your responsibility is also high, because whatever act you do, whatever you do in your daily life, in your professional life, it will obviously have a direct or an indirect impact on India. Because if your acts are good, you will create a positive image for India, and you have to be more responsible in doing that. Being more responsible will benefit you, it will eventually benefit India. So hey, okay. India's strength will go further if in the days to come, and so will the curiosity about India. The more overseas Indians know about India, the more they will be able to tell others over there. And In this context, he urged the NRIs to visit India during festivals or watch events related to Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Basically, he said that if you guys will know India, if you will visit India and you go back and you tell about India to other people over there, those who are natives of that particular country in which you are staying, then there might be a possibility that they will also come to India, and in this way tourism will increase in India. Actually, in 2016, there was a program launched by the government of India. That program was known as No India Program. Basically, it was for the youth, the diaspora youth who are of Indian origin and wants to visit India, and actually there is this Bharat Darshan program in this No India program. The government will have designed this tour for them, and the government will take them to various places of importance or various significant places in which they will come to know about India, and that is the No India program. And then when they go back to their respective countries and they tell their peers over there, there might be a possibility that it might increase tourism in India, and this is what the Prime Minister was also highlighting here. He listed India's achievements that drew the world's attention in the recent past. First is country's COVID-19 vaccination program, and I believe that our vaccination program was one of the most efficient programs or vaccination programs of the world. Our vaccine also is one of the most efficient vaccines in the world. Attaining the status of the 5th largest economy, yes, we surpassed UK to become the 5th largest economy of the world. Manufacturing of Tejas fighter jets, it is basically a light combat aircraft and it is indigenously manufactured. So, it reflects Atmanirbharta, or it reflects the strength of Make in India. Then INS Vikrant, and then Arihant class submarine. INS Vikrant is the submarine, INS Vikrant is this aircraft carrier which is also indigenously built. Then Arihant class submarine, indigenously built. Then growing popularity of digital transactions, as I told you, as I mentioned you in that United Umbrella, this entity, umbrella entity, that the digital transactions have been have grown up by 500% in India. So, the Prime Minister highlighted this fact in his speech also. Now, governor versus state government, and here in this news piece we will be discussing about the conflict between the governor of Tamil Nadu and this chief minister or the government of Tamil Nadu. Actually, what happened? The chief minister M.K. Stalin of Tamil Nadu gave a speech to read to the governor. Now, why did he give this speech to read to the governor? This question will be answered because it is mandatory for the governor to address the parliament or address the legislative assembly on 2 occasions. First is when a new government is formed and when a new government is elected, and second is at the beginning of every year. At the beginning of every year, this address has to be given by the governor to the state legislative assemblies, and the president also in the center gives this. Now, the governor of this Tamil Nadu, this R.N. Ravi, basically he skipped some of the paragraphs of that particular speech purposely. M.K. Stalin, basically the chief minister, was not happy about this fact, and on official records he gave the entire speech to be mentioned that this was the speech which the governor read out. On records the entire speech was mentioned, but while delivering he missed out a certain paragraphs. Now, when he missed out a certain paragraphs and when M.K. Stalin gave that entire speech to be published in the records, the governor R.N. Ravi staged a walkout from the legislative assembly, and that walkout was during the national anthem being played. So, this was the basic issue. Now, in this topic we will be discussing that is it mandatory for the governor to read each and every piece of that particular speech which the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the Chief Minister, has provided him to. That is the main question. Now, when I come to this, Governor of Tamil Nadu R.N. Ravi skipped certain portions of the text of his customary address to the state's legislature. As a result, Chief Minister of the state M.K. Stalin moved a resolution demanding only the original printed speech in Tamil be put in the records. in the records, the entire speech should be put. Governor R.N. Ravi reacted to this in an unprecedented manner by staging a walkout from the house in protest even before the national anthem was played. Now, the background. The constitution gives president under article 87 and the governor under article 176 the power to address a sitting of a legislature. The special power is with regard to two occasions. First occasion is to address the opening session of a new legislature after a general elections. Second is to address the first sitting of the legislature each year. First sitting of the year, then the first sitting of the year should be opened by the address by the governor in the state legislative assembly, by the president in the parliament. Commonly referred to as the president's or governor's address, they are a constitutional requirement because article 176 is requiring the governor to deliver that speech. Article 87 is requiring the president to deliver that speech. A session of a new or a continuing legislature cannot be without fulfilling this requirement. This is mandatory, this has to be done, the delivering of that particular address. Now, article 176 of the constitution, at the commencement of the first session after each general elections to the legislative assembly and at the commencement of the first session of the each year, the governor shall address the legislative assembly and inform the legislature of the causes of its summons, why you have been called. And in the case of state having a legislative council, both houses assembled should be assembled together for this address. Provision shall be made by the rules regulating the procedure of the house or either house for the allotment of time for discussions on the matters referred to in such cases. Now, his speech can also be discussed. Now, what does this address contain? What is there in this address? The president's or governor's speech follows the convention of the British system, where it contains legislative and policy proposals that the government intends to initiate, that these are the laws which we are wanting to implement these laws in the coming year or in our coming tenure. This is there. Then the speech also recaps the government's accomplishments in the previous year. What we have accomplished in the previous year, this is also there in that speech. The contents of the speech are put together by aggregating inputs from various ministries of the government, because achievements and all will be taken from the ministries. The future prospects or the future, I would say, agendas will also be taken from the ministries. So, ministries or ministers will be putting inputs on that speech. Is it prepared by the governor himself or herself? No, it is not prepared by the governor him or herself. The constitution under article 74 and article 163 respectively binds the president and governor to act on the aid and advice of the council of ministers of the union and state governments respectively on a majority of issues. Therefore, the speech that the president or the governor reads before the legislature is the viewpoint of the government and is prepared by it. As I told you that various ministries will be giving inputs, so it is not prepared by the governor or the president. What happens in case of disagreement, like what happened here? The president or the governor cannot refuse to perform the constitutional duty of delivering an address to the legislature. ये तो करना ही है, address तो देना ही. The governor cannot refuse or the president cannot refuse to deliver the address. Now comes the second part, that in that address, does the governor have any say or the president have any say? But there can be situations where they decide or they deviate from the text of the speech prepared by the government, where they deviate from the text of the speech. They can do that. This has been done by the governor. So far there have been no incidences of president doing so at the central level, but yes, many instances or multiple occasions when a governor skipped the portion of the address to the assembly. The governor has skipped the portion, and this means this episode in Tamil Nadu is not the first such episode happening. Before that, the governor has skipped multiple times. Now, does it violate the constitutional provisions? Actually, on this particular question, there is this grey area. Some experts believe that the governor should have spoken or should have read out the entire speech, because the governor is bound to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by Chief Minister. Some sections say that no, governor is not bound. It is also about the freedom of speech and expression of the governor. It is also about considering the viewpoint of the governor, because governor is actually the head of that particular state government. So there is this grey zone. The debate has not been conclusively decided yet, whether it is binding on the governor to read each and every part. In Shamsher Singh versus State of Punjab, the Supreme Court said that the principle that the president or the governor is guided by the aid and advice of the cabinet or the Council of Ministers, whether it relates to addressing the House or returning a bill for reconsideration or assenting or withholding the assent. Many experts believe that it was the intention of the constitution makers to include this particular concept that the governor is bound or the president is bound. And people may question, but from a hardcore legalistic viewpoint, it is not unlawful. It is not unlawful that the governor is skipping various portions of that speech. So this is there. However, if the governor skips certain portions of the speech, it will surely strike at the roots of the norms of the parliamentary system of the government. Okay. Next piece of news is Succulent 1 oil and gas field. Now, Succulent 1 oil and gas field, Succulent is basically this island which you can see here, and it is in the far east of Russia. This belongs to Russia, and here we are having this oil and natural gas field. The purple ones you see is Succulent 1 and the green ones you see is Succulent 2. So we will only be dealing with Succulent 1. Okay. ONGC Videsh Limited, the overseas arm of the state-owned oil and natural gas corporation. Actually ONGC you might be knowing, and if ONGC has to do any exploration in overseas, in other countries other than India, then there is a separate arm for that, that is ONGC Videsh Limited, OVL, you name it, and it has retaken, OVL has retaken a 20% stake in the Succulent 1 oil and gas fields in the far east region of Russia. About Succulent 1, Succulent 1 oil and gas field is basically located in the Okhotsk of the northeastern coast of Sakhalin Island in the Russian Far East. It comprises 3 offshore fields, namely Chayo, Odoptu and Arkutun Dagi. The Sakhalin 1 project is operated by Exxon Neft Gas, ENL, a subsidiary of Exxon Mobil, which holds 30% stakes in that. Then the other partners of the project are Japanese consortium Sakhalin Oil and Gas Development Company, SODECO, which holds again 30%. India's state-owned ONGC Videsh, which holds 20%, we have regained it, and Russian oil company Rosneft, which holds 20%. The Sakhalin 1 project is estimated to hold approximately 2.3 billion barrels of oil and 17.1 trillion cubic feet of recoverable reserves. About ONGC Videsh Limited, who is there for doing this particular job. OVL is a Mini Ratna Schedule A Central Public Service Enterprise. Ye Mini Ratna, Maharatna are the classifications of the Central Public Sector Undertakings, CPSUs, and it is a wholly owned subsidiary of Oil and Natural Gas Company. OVL comes under the administrative control of Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The primary business of ONGC Videsh is to prospect for oil and gas acreages outside India, including exploration, development and production of oil and gas. ONGC Videsh Limited is the second largest petroleum company of India after ONGC, its parent company. Next is Digital Voter ID. Now, you can download this Digital Voter ID now and go for voting. You can show this Digital Voter ID, it will be in PDF format, and you can go for voting by showing this to the election officials over there. Actually, our voting card is known as EPIC. EPIC stands for Electoral Photo ID Card. Electoral Photo ID Card, जिसको हम short form में we call it voter ID card. ठीक है. तो ये this is the actual name, the official name of Epic, the official name of voter ID card. Epic is this. Then if it is available in electronic format, then it is e-Epic. ठीक है. Now e-Epic is one of the few generally accepted identity documents that can be downloaded as a legally valid PDF file along with e-PAN and e-Aadhaar. About 9.8 crore voters are currently eligible to download e-Epic, the ECI said in its RTI response. That is 6.8% of the voters who are eligible to download an e-Epic. ठीक है. और ECI said that just over 67 lakh voters, less than 1% of the voters have downloaded a digital voter ID card. However, 9.8 crore voters are eligible, but only 67 lakh voters have downloaded it. ठीक है. So you can do it if elections are approaching. Now e-Epic, what is the e-Epic? Is a portable document format. Portable document format means PDF version of Epic, which can be downloaded or on mobile or in a self-printable form on the computer. A voter can thus store the card on his or her mobile, upload it on DigiLocker or print it and self-laminate it. DigiLocker is basically again a government portal. I use it and I find it to be very efficient. You can store your documents like 10th, 12th mark sheet, passport, Aadhaar card, voter ID card, PAN card over there, and where driving license, and if the police asks you for driving license and all, so you can show it to them in DigiLocker. That will be valid. That is 100% valid. If anyone argues with you, then you can actually argue with them back that this is 100% valid, this is DigiLocker. Okay. So it is that portal of the government. It can be used as a valid proof of age, address to avail various government services and schemes. In the first phase, new electors who were registered during the special summary revision 2021 and had a unique mobile number in the e-roll were eligible for the e-Epic. In the second phase, all eligible voters who have valid EPIC number were made eligible for the e-Epic. Next is Rural Health Statistics Report. Now, Rural Health Statistics Report, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has published the Rural Health Statistics Report. Now, this Rural Health Statistics Report is released every year and it is being released since the year 1992. It provides data on health infrastructure, including manpower up to 31st March of every year. The publication is based on data uploaded by the states UTs on Health Management Information System. Actually, this is the portal on which the state governments upload the data, and on the basis of that, on the basis of the inputs updated by the state governments or UT governments on HMIS portal, this report is prepared. It serves as a vision document in identifying the gaps in the existing healthcare system. Now, key highlights of this report. First is health centers. Now, as per norms, each sub center is supposed to cater a population of 3,000 to 5,000, each primary health center to a population of 20,000 to 30,000, and each community health center, that is CHC, to a population of 80,000 to 1,20,000. The RHS estimates, the Rural Health Survey estimates of 31st March 2022 has revealed each SC catered to an average of 5691 people, in which it had to cater to 3,000 to 5,000 people. Each PHC catered to 36,049 people. It had technically to cater to 20,000 to 30,000, means it is catering to more people. It is also catering to more people. And each CHC to 1,64,027 people, and maximum 1,20,000 people a CHC can cater to. Urban health statistics, if I talk about, there is vacancy of 18.8% of the doctors, 16.8% of pharmacists, 16.8% of lab technicians, and 19.1% of staff nurses, means there is staff shortage in urban areas, in urban health centers. Now, the population covered by UPHC is urban primary health centers, may vary from 50,000 to 75,000. However, a rural primary health center is 20,000 to 30,000. Okay. Urban is 50,000 to 75,000. Urban Community Health Center is set up as a referral facility for every 4-5 UPSCs. Means every 4-5 primary health centers in urban areas will have one CHC, means community health center. Okay. Rise in number of allopathy doctors. This is some good news that there has been an over 50% rise in the number of allopathy doctors in the primary health centers since the launch of National Rural Health Mission in 2005. Then the allopathic doctors at PHCs have increased from 20,308 in 2005 to 30,640 in 2022. Shortage of specialist doctors. The specialist doctors are in shortage. Okay. That is worrisome. Okay. That is worrisome for us. Now, if I see this healthcare centers in India are vacant according to rural health statistics. The chart shows the vacancies of specialists in CHCs across specialities. 2021, this was percentage vacancy. Then 2022 it came down, but marginally have come down. Okay. So this actually shows it. India is reeling under an acute shortage of specialist doctors with a shortfall of nearly 80% of the requirement specialists at CHCs. The report points out there is a shortfall of specialist doctors including surgeons, obstetricians, gynecologists, etc., etc. So this is actually the bad news that comes from this report. Number of doctors have increased, allopathic doctors have increased from 2005, but the number of specialists, they are less. There is a vacancy gap in that. Next is Voice of the Global South Summit. Now this Voice of the Global South Summit was hosted by India. The purpose of hosting this summit was that India is holding the presidency of G20 for this year, and in G20 we said that our agenda is that we want to be the voice of the global south. बोल तो दिया हमने वहां पे in G20 that we want to represent the global south, but through this summit we are connecting with the global south that okay, you tell us what are your problems, your concern is our concern, your voice is India's voice. I will keep that in G20. In September 2023 a summit is going to happen in India, so I will keep your concern in that summit. But to get more clarity on this, you need to first understand what is global south. हम कह तो रहे हैं, we are saying that global south, we are the voice of global south, we want to address the concerns of the global south. But what is global south? The red portion which you see in this map, actually Asia, Africa, South America. These countries are basically they did not take part in the Industrial Revolution. They were also devoid of development during the Cold War period, that is 1945 to 1991. Basically they are developing underdeveloped countries. However, one country in south or two countries you can say in south, that is Australia and New Zealand, they are not part of global south, they are part of global north because they are developed. This bifurcation is on the basis of economic status. Okay. So this is global south actually, and we want to be the voice of global south. Evolution of global south. How did this idea emerge? The idea of powerful global north and a resistant global south was promoted by the Zapatista revolt in Mexico, the African Renaissance, and the World Social Forum launched in Brazil. Mexico, Africa, Brazil, developing, underdeveloped. Industrial growth in Asia and emerging BRICS. When BRICS emerged, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, all developing countries, they formed this grouping 2009. So this further affirmed, or this further gave more, I would say, force to this concept of global south, that south-south cooperation is happening between the southern countries, means underdeveloped or developing countries. The ongoing Russia-Ukraine war has compelled the developing and lower income countries, which define the global south, to take a firm stand and not be dragged into either of the camps. Either of the camps means towards Russia or towards the developed West. They said that leave us alone. According to External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, the global south today is facing critical issues like an unabated rise in the price of oil, food and fertilizers, coupled with mounting debt and rapidly deteriorating economic growth. These are the issues, and that is why we want to be the voice of Global South. Now, about this Voice of Global South Summit, Voice of the Global South Summit is an initiative by India. It is an effort to give voice to the unheard and thereby leverage India's role as the current G20 president. The idea behind this summit is that India will work to ensure that inputs generated from partner countries in Voice of Global South Summit, in this summit, whatever inputs we will be getting, we will be keeping those inputs in the G20 summit of 2023, September, which will happen. India is hosting the summit under the theme Unity of Voice, Unity of Purpose. And this initiative is inspired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Prayas, and is underpinned by India's philosophy of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which translates to the world is one family. Okay. So, world is under crisis, we need this kind of cooperation. He said that it is clear that the world is in a state of crisis. It is difficult to predict how long this state of instability will continue or will last. PM Modi gave the mantra of respond, recognize, respect and reform. Respond to the priorities of the Global South. Recognize that the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities apply to the global challenges. Common but differentiated responsibilities, एक example I will give you, that tackling climate change is a common responsibility for the developing, underdeveloped or the developed. Means for the north as well as for the south, it is a common responsibility. But it should be differentiated. The developed countries should be doing more for conserving the environment and the developing, underdeveloped should be doing less. So, it is a common but differentiated responsibility. Okay. So, he highlighted that also, that we need to recognize this common but differentiated responsibilities. Then respect sovereignty of all the nations, whether developing, underdeveloped, and reform international institutions including United Nations to make them more relevant. Okay. All these things should be done. And now we come to the last piece of news, that is minorities in India. Okay. So, minorities in India, basically what are these minorities in India? There are two kind of minorities. First is religious minority and second is linguistic minorities. Religious minorities identified in India, there are 6 religious minorities which have been identified: Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Jains and Zoroastrians. Okay. Linguistic minorities can differ. Those people who are less in number and they are speaking a language and are less in number, they can be different state to state. Like in Punjab, if you go, the Punjabi speaking people are in majority, Hindi speaking are in minority. In Hindi or in UP if you come, the Hindi speaking people are in majority, Punjabi speaking people are in minority. So, this kind of variations do happen with respect to linguistic minority. But why this was in news? Recently the central government submitted views of 24 states to the Supreme Court on whether religious and linguistic minority communities should be identified and notified by the union government or respective state governments. So, the state governments are also saying that union government should identify. Presently union government is identifying. Okay. But there was this question whether the states should be there in identifying the minorities or not. Now, who gives minority status in India? The central government decides who get the minority community status in India. It is done under National Commission for Minorities Act 1992. Only those belonging to communities notified under section 2C of this act are regarded as minority citizens. The central government has notified only 6 communities as having the minority status. These are religious minority status. 5 of them were declared minority communities in October 1993. These 5 were Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists and Parsis. In January 2014, the center added Jains to the list also. States generally don't have their separate list of minorities. I am talking about religious minorities, not linguistic minorities. States do have a separate list of linguistic minorities because linguistic minorities differ from state to state. But when I talk about religious minorities, they generally do not have, but there are certain exceptions. There are certain exceptions like Maharashtra has notified Jews as a minority community in the state. Okay. But Jews is not labeled as a minority community in the center. Constitutional provisions with respect to minorities, Article 29, Article 30. Article 29 per se is not for the minorities only, it is a general article the article says that any community has the right to preserve its culture, its language, its tradition, and when it talks about any community, it can be majority community also. Okay. But Article 30 gives the right to the minority communities to form, administer their own educational institutions and such like. So these are called as the minority rights, Article 29 and 30, which are mentioned in the Constitution. So the Constitution has given ample protective measures to the minority communities in the country. So that is all for today, and we will quickly meet for the doubt session, and we will also be discussing one very important topic on one very important question, that how important is optional subject and how to choose optional subject.